Hey, Luke. And hey, Giacomo. One of my favorite people in the entire Bitcoin space is on the show tonight, Mr. Giacomo Zucco, the man whose toxicity level is somewhere between Alice Cooper and Britney Spears. And he has upgraded his beautiful Bitcoin wall with the nice little the cover for Citadel 21 magazine issue 2. I believe I have one myself.
Number 13.
Yeah. I have number 11, I think. Not entirely sure, but where are you? Where are you on the cover? Can you point me out? Are you next to me?
That I should be. Yeah. Next to you. Just Olivera.
Yeah. And who's that next to us? It's Katie the Russian, right?
Yes, should be Katie with the skateboard.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've seen her do pods with that thing in the background as well. I love it. It's so good. I sold my house in Sweden, by the way. Now I'm doxing way too much, as always. But the new owners wanted to buy that, but they couldn't. I mean, they can have the house, but you can't have that.
Right. Yeah. Houses are not stocks.
No, exactly. Houses are shit coins.
You can print houses.
Exactly. You can print houses. So how are you, Giacomo? How are you doing these days?
I'm great. Not going around as I used to because of the second little kid, but I plan to start again next year. And I think we will spend a few months in El Salvador. So we are also moving to more tropical location, or subtropical in your case. But we're also planning to move around.
Oh, nice. And you flew to El Salvador when that kid was really, really young, right?
Yeah. My middle was 4 months old, and he did 4 Bitcoin conferences per month because he did basically not Riga. Riga was alone, but he did Amsterdam, Lugano, Viareggio, and San Salvador.
Oh, that's fantastic! Milo Satoshi for the win.
Yeah.
So that's nice. So what you're up to these days is mostly being a father, then, I guess.
More than other peers, but still I'm trying to accomplish something outside because as a father, I'm partially redundant because the mother.
I know.
I'm sorry. I mean, genitor A and genitor B as a identified father. I am less important, but I am important. But I'm writing a book. Which is something that I told you years ago already, but now the Italian publisher is actually starts to blackmail me and to send severed horse heads to my house. So I'm happy to get going.
Happy to hear that. We all love severed horse heads. So you're finally getting some peace of mind to write then, I take it.
Not more than an hour a day, Frank, but I tried with that.
I think,
I'm
go
on. Consultancy, so mostly is still Swiss bank. I'm at Orange peeling a few new banks. There's a new cycle where there are a few new clients that are interesting. And I'm doing education programs mostly. I'm helping the El Salvador education program. I'm doing something with the Lugano University. So education, consultancy, writing, being a father, and of course, the most important of all, shit posting on Twitter and on Nostr. I tried the shit post space, so I'm a busy.
Yeah. That must take up all of your time. I have not yet hopped onto Nostr for that very reason.
Save your time. Yep.
Yeah. That's the time management thing. And my boy told me today that he's going to uninstall TikTok.
That's good.
He had TikTok installed, and he has now realized that it's Chinese malware and that it's bullshit and it's stealing his life. So he decided to uninstall it. So I'm a proud father today.
It's a little drug, so very, very good.
It is. Yeah.
Twitter is similar to us, well, in a way, but written text instead of videos is lower intensity, is probably less immersive. So I can shit post while I do other things. While not trigger to watch videos while you do other things. Very, it's a totalitarian kind of interaction when you have audio and video all focus on one thing, very, very fast all day. It's very attractive and very seductive and very addicting.
I know the few times I've, hopped into those on YouTube or whatever and like looked at some of those reels. I sound really old now. I realize that, but once I do that, it's you can feel it. It's very hard to stop because it's dopamine hit after dopamine hit. It's really, and for kids.
Yeah. And if you look at some, I used to get lost into YouTube rabbit holes many years ago. But if you look at those videos now, they look so slow and boring and easy to get out of compared to the frequency and the speed of this. So the short version is very, very key, because before you can start to think, okay, maybe it's 1 hour I'm looking at ancient pyramids on Mars. It's fun, but maybe I have to get something done. With reels, you cannot, because before you finish, you're immediately entering something different, something else. So it's literally engineered to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. And they suck you in. Like, I didn't see it until I watched it 15 times, ... and stuff like that. It's just horrible. Yeah. And the attention span is shrinking for everyone.
I have to say, Nostr so far is not really, I'm joking about that, but it's not really a time wasting platform. So you can lower your fear for now, at least, because the selection of people is very, I see now, very low noise. Again, if Nostr will work, that would change by definition. We will have noise because we will have people. But so far, the selection is very, very high quality.
Yeah. Yeah. I need to hop onto that any day now.
Sorry, I added something more. One of the reasons I'm not really shit posting on Nostr that much is that this selection of people basically prevents me from fighting. And everybody's a little bit too much like-minded. So we do fight maybe about ordinance and stuff, but not very much. So then this pre-selection makes sure that I cannot get dopamine out of yelling at people, which was an important process on Twitter. So I'm saying that Nostr is safer on that point of view as well.
So you're saying that Nostr is a social network that is a protocol that is filled with nice, clever people.
So far, because it was like the few pioneers that are storming with it. There is no direct incentive for scammers to join right now.
It's never going to take off then.
I hope it's not limited to that. I hope it can make it stupid enough to.
We can. I can join and we can try to fill that hole. Make a stupid argument about something.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, what was the thing I wanted to talk to you about? Yeah, our old Venn diagram. You remember that?
Yeah, the science one. Science versus
Yeah, what was that? It was 3 circles: academic research, deductive reasoning, and bro science.
Precise.
And that you have Bitcoin in the middle because it fills all 3 circles in the Venn diagram.
Trade-offs are that basically in academic research, you have a lot of data, so you don't have sample bias. You can find causality easier because you have these big numbers. You go across nationalities and history, so you have a bigger picture, and you may have some kind of sound, rigorous scientific reasoning. May have, at least in a healthy academic kind of stuff. But you don't have like personal feedback, so you cannot trust that there is not a hidden agenda, that there is not some bias or something like that. In the birth science, you have high trust because something which happened to you or to your friend that has no reason to lie to you, but you have a very small sample, so it's easy to delude yourself. And the first principle is the safer kind of deductive reasoning because it's a thing that you can check yourself because it's far from first principle, but the bandwidth, the calculation that you need to turn a first principle into useful stuff is so huge. So the computational irreducibility of the complexity compared to the first principle is so high that often it's useless. So, or at least it's practically useless. Some of the things you can reach from first principle.
Yeah. And I think that this is the thing I like so much about that diagram and like our discussions about it is like people need, a way to filter out noise and see signal in the world. And a pure academic research source, quote unquote, scientific worldview does not do that to it's not sufficient for people to find the actual signal, because academic research is so full of noise these days, since it's been so politicized and like hijacked by political. I guess it was always political to some extent, but these days it seems like it's gone totally overboard in very many countries with political agendas steering the whole thing, and as the people not being able to say actual, to show actual scientific results because they don't fit into that political box at that specific time. And it's just tragic to see. So we need something else. But of course, my favorite rabbit hole is deductive reasoning and praxeology and first principles thinking, because it can provide you with a lens that is very much needed in order to find what's wrong with academic research. But then we have bro science, and bro science it's sort of like grandmother's medicine is in the same category. Like, oh, you have a cold, you should take this herbal tea here that I made because it's been working for centuries. And my favorite example of a bro science thing is the seed oils theory, because it sounds very good. Like a seed oil is there to protect the seed from the from the intestines of the animal that the seed is going through. So therefore, it's not there to protect the animal at all. It's there to protect the seed. I guess that's the basic idea behind why seed oils are bad. But to my knowledge, there are no real, scientific empirical evidence studies around seed oils and why they're bad. It's just that people have, found this to be a very compelling argument.
Compelling, and somebody managed to try on themselves. On themselves, on a very small sample, on a very short period, but still with very high trust, because you trust yourself. You're not trying to fool yourself, at least not normally. Or a similar thing for carnivores, actually. There's a lot of people that say carnivore diet because I feel better. But one of the original arguments was a first principle derived evolutionary argument. So the idea was the 10,000 years, barrier 10,000 years that go from the beginning of agriculture to now are not enough for your body to change after a couple of millions evolving, probably eating a large animal meat. But then, of course, the thing with first principle is that when you go into complexity, there is a lot of possible nuances. For example, sure, your body cannot really change in 10,000 years very much, but your gut flora can. So that's one of the reasons when you start carnivore diet, most people get sick for basically keto fever for the first weeks, because all your gut flora, which has been evolved even less than in a few years, actually, gut flora evolves a lot. And now you will have gut flora attacking your intestine because they don't take sugar anymore. So you have to kill them all and to replace it with amino acid based gut flora. So there are a lot of nuances that first principles and alone cannot actually bring to you. For example, my wife noticed that for her, from a broad sister science point of view, science, she was not feeling good on pure carnivore. And if you research, you may end up thinking that maybe the hunter-gatherer society did create some evolutionary gap between the male body, which is more oriented to hunting, and the female one, which is more oriented to gathering. So berries and honey, of course, not like tons of processed sugar, but maybe some honey, some berries, some
vegetables. Yeah.
Maybe some vegetables. Yeah. Maybe we don't know, but yeah, the first principle is my favorite as well. But I acknowledge that you cannot arrive everywhere. You cannot basically find the conclusion for everything. What you can do is rule out inconsistency, which is very powerful. So you cannot exactly say what's going on, but you can say that what they're saying you is going on is definitely not going on, because there is a logical inconsistency in the claim.
Yeah. That's why I love Hans Hermann Hoppe's argumentation ethics so much. That was a real eye opener. But let's not go there just yet. Yeah, I was thinking of the bro science and the deductive reasoning, because especially with diets and stuff that has to do with your own body and your own beliefs about what's good for you and what's bad for you, that is also very prone to placebo and nocebo and all of these effects that, like, if you truly believe something is good for you, it's actually better for you than if you don't believe it. So like there are and which is also why like all these theories about diets and stuff are so all to be taken with a grain of salt. Everything should be taken with a grain of salt, because
that's also dietary.
Yeah, it's also the best dietary advice is a grain of salt to everything, actually, because and it's so personal, because everyone's gut flora is different, and it has to do with your sex and with what your gut is used to eating, and also what you believe plays a big part in it too. So it's a very tricky, noise to signal water to navigate. There's no real beacon telling you that this is correct.
Or bacon.
Yeah. The beacon is bacon.
Well, but to side on the other side of the argument and play devil's advocate for a while, it's also true though that probably diet is speaking about the first principle mental models, is a very Paretian discussion. So to get the perfect diet for you, probably you have to go through a lot of nuances, a lot of details, a lot of personal things, genetic things, lifestyle things, sex things, stuff like that. Sex thing is the sense of your specific sex.
Sex is a very important, crucial part to any diet.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if you don't want to go to 100% and you just want to go to 80% of something better than the mainstream poison, probably you can. So even if it's simple theory, just like a boiled grains is probably going to do the 80% of the work compared to a mainstream diet. And then in order to go to perfect fine tuning, you will need to research a lot on yourself and your genetic traits and your gut flora and the kind of food you're buying and everything. But I also appreciate, just like a little bit like maximalist in general, slogans can be helpful, because some things are some attractors are so strong that if you go with the slogan, you can cover at least 80% of the stuff with a low damage approximation. And only if you really have to do to 100% because you are an athlete or you are sick, you have some kind of illness, or you have to super perform, then you can go to the remaining 20%, which will take 80% of the effort to discover. So avoid seed oils and just eat steak and drink water is probably going to do best better than the state appointed expert food triangle, for sure, 80% better. Then if you really want to reach the full apex, probably you have to read research and filter out a lot of personal biases like placebo effects or a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, speaking of personal biases, this is something I've been wanting to pick your brain on for quite a while about. The meme, I support the current thing, with five booster shots and the Ukraine flag and the rainbow flag and whatever the flavor of the day is. I've noticed in the Bitcoin space that as a group, Bitcoiners are very prone to do I reject the current thing. Like instead of like having a nuanced approach, it's often just people realize that what the government says is a lie, so automatically they take the opposing position and take the conspiracy theory to be true. And I think my intuition says that there's a lot of lazy thinking here, and Bitcoiners on a whole are at risk now I'm talking about Bitcoiners as a group, which is wrong in so many ways. I know that, but many Bitcoiners are like at risk of falling into that trap of doing the lazy thing and just taking the opposite to be true when they realize that something the government says is a lie. And therefore, like carnivory is a good example. It's like there's a pendulum effect in humanity that when there's too much of something, so when there's too many blue-haired lesbian vegan ladies promoting left-wing ideologies, we all turn to Andrew Tate and we buy gas-guzzling pickup trucks and guns and get tribal tattoos and start doing push-ups. Wasting time on push-ups 8 hours a day. And like, what do you see a risk here in the Bitcoin space, or like what's your experience with this? And
yeah, I do see it. Again, I would apply the same argument as before. So we live in a particular time in which I think that mainstream bullshit reached such a level of nonsense that even exceeding on the other extreme by psychological pendulum effect is probably safer than. So it's not symmetric. It's not like being an normie is not symmetric with being an excessive lazy contrarian. Probably you're better off being a lazy contrarian than the normie at this point. Of course, the second good argument is that some Bitcoiners, and not all of them, but some Bitcoiners still try to use the first principles approach together with the simple contrarian heuristic. So even if you argue with Bitcoiners, for example, I do not support the current thing in the terms of COVID lockdowns or stuff like that. But I do kind of support the current thing when talking about the Russian war, which is not very popular among Bitcoiners. And if I fight with a Bitcoiner about that, the good thing is that we will mostly try to go beyond the heuristic using first principles. So I will tell them, the points that you need to defend independence from a bigger state aggressing the other one because that's better. And then what about Donbass? That's a smaller state aggressed by Ukraine. I would say, yeah, that's a good argument. So we can try to use the contrarian heuristic as a start. And then we can probably try to use the first principles in order to navigate when contrarianism fails. Of course, that depends on the time you have for discussion and the bandwidth. So if you're just trying to cheat cost means, there's no space for that, and means can get in the trap of being wrong because the heuristic of being contrarian is wrong. But among Bitcoiners, I still see a lot of effort to actually try to drill down why was my heuristic wrong in this case or not, or something like that.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Yeah, about the Ukraine war, it's funny that you'd mentioned that because that's one of the things where I tend to disagree also, and I see most of the people, the thinkers that I really respect, they do not take the opposing view. They realize that when Sean Penn gives his Oscar statue to Zelensky, Sean Penn is the bad guy, not Zelensky necessarily. In comparison, I mean, it's of course aggression against another state is horrible. By the way, have you,
especially if it's a bigger state, because I mean, if the bigger it is, was going to aggress Switzerland to get more independence, or for Liechtenstein. So it's also symmetric in terms of size and influence, in my opinion. Also, of course, I'm biased because people tell me that I look like Zelensky. So in this case, it's just a personal aesthetic bias.
No, you look like Britney. I have to ask you, have you seen a film with Peter Sellers from the 60s called The Mouse That Roared? When you mentioned Liechtenstein. It's about a fictitious small European state. You'd love this movie. So it's Peter Sellers, and he's the king of this country, or I don't remember if it's the king or what he's doing in the country. But the point is, they realize that they're poor, they're dirt poor, and then in the middle of Europe, and they're a small kingdom, and they realize that all countries that have been at war with the US have after the war received a lot of relief money from the US
Like
afterwards.
Marshall, yeah.
So they decide to send to use a steamboat to send over 20 archers to take the US. So they take the steamboat across the Atlantic. But this small army of 20 archers, who is doomed to fail, get their hands on some bomb and actually manage to take the US. And then they're in a moral dilemma. You'd love that movie. I think it's right up your alley.
I will watch it.
It's a bit slow because it's from the 60s, but the premise is so good.
There are other, not just for us, like another example where I think that our heuristic may fail as a group is recently I was discussing about this SEC getting against their maximalist pronunciation, like Bitcoin is not security, everything as is, which is getting some Bitcoiners to just like glorify the SEC as something good because it will fight the scams or the illegal security, which I think is a very fallacious approach, because a centralized mafia telling people you cannot buy these, otherwise I will hurt you, is not the best way to explain people why this is stupid and this will hurt you. Prohibition for alcohol or shitcoin or weed or
gambling,
sex is your gambling or whatever is never a good solution for education. You actually you get counterproductive effects in the long term. And still recently, just today, I had some fight about the governor of Florida, basically stopping Disney Corporation from running Disney World in Orlando as a sovereign state. So it was basically flexing the fact that finally Orlando is back to the state of Florida. No, they will pay taxes. I will put the government appointed officials to oversee the board of Disneyland, and they are not sovereign anymore. And a lot of Bitcoiners are like cheering that finally, this is finally keeping this Disney pedophiles in check. But the problem is that as a general principle, we used to understand the Hobbesian point about fragmentation of our enemy and the institutional competition, the argument from the sovereign individual that it's better if our enemy is fractional and competing, and it's better to have more than one. It's more chaos, but it's also more opportunity to circumvent violence.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And you're totally right about the SEC. All that leads to, it's like the war on terrorism or the war on drugs. It creates these Pablo Escobar types in the long run, I guess. And in the crypto space, I guess it's going to create more SBFs. I don't know what they will look like. Probably they look like clowns, but in another way than he did. But it's not going to solve the problem. Prohibition is never the way.
And it's
I'm
a dichotomy between supporting the pen. I can despise the X, but also despise the people threatening violence.
Yeah.
X at the same time, and it's completely consistent.
Yeah, the abortions comes to mind. You could hate them, but still be of the opinion that it should be up to the woman to do them or not.
Yeah, even if you are making it probably one of the most controversial part of the case of this guy, because not all, but many abortion prohibition defenders are not using the argument that the woman should not do it because it's bad for her. So it's some kind of paternalistic prohibition. Don't do it because it's bad for you, but actually because it is bad for the baby. So they are trying to just put they are trying to rebalance the borders between two property rights, which are in direct conflict. So I would see abortion topic closer to the typical discussion about the two people climbing a mountain, cutting the tether if somebody falls. So it's a little bit more complex than just paternalism.
Maybe it's a bad example, but it came to mind. Please do.
It is an example.
It's an extreme example of basically the same argument, but
even as somebody who sympathizes with the pro-life libertarian argument, still I could even say that even if I think that abortion should be probably stopped from the point of view of property right defense. Still, I don't think the federal government would be the best actor to do
No,
that.
exactly.
Because it could not. So it would be ineffective and maybe it would be accusing. So I could even sustain a position in which, yes, this thing that is violating the non-aggression principle, but still, I don't want the government agency able to look into the uterus of a woman or able to stop them from doing it, which is still is consistent. Like child abuse is something terrible. Nobody can not agree that it's terrible. But I don't want the government with cameras inside any house in order to know if they're doing child abuse, and I don't want the government to kidnap and interrogate children. Know that's going on. So one thing is thinking that something should be prohibited in theory, and one thing is defend a general police state in order to enact the prohibition, which is completely a different thing.
Absolutely, and this is where what so many people get wrong. Like all this virtue signaling on social media, you see people post something about their opinion on a certain issue, and it's always this should be prohibited or this should be prohibited, but they never ask the follow-up question: who should decide on if on the prohibition? Like a camera in each kid's room is child abuse. Like if you have the government's eye in that is if that's not the definition of child abuse, I don't know what is.
So yeah, you create the same thing you want to prevent in prohibition usually. Like you with war on drugs, you created the FBI as one of the most powerful drug and importer in the United States, and you always have basically contrarian effects from what you want. Whenever you try to take the shortcut, which should be something clear to Congress, a generic framework, just a mental model of low-term preference. Like if you want the shortcut, something that magically solves the problem right now with super powerful being, usually there is something wrong with that. What you have to seek is the long-term, low-time preference approach where you actually solve things organically.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I heard somewhere that the difference between a drug cartel and a government is that the drug cartel, at least the drug cartel, doesn't force you to take their drugs. It's voluntary to buy them.
That's true. That's true. It's like a Venn model and the social security Ponzi scheme. So social security, most current national states is a literal Ponzi scheme from the specific literal mathematical point of view. But Venn model was running a Ponzi, but was not forcing you to invest in his fund, was even pretending not to want your money. And then he was just not telling you the truth about the investment mechanism. The governments with social security, they are lying about investment returns because it's just unsustainable, because it is the Ponzi scheme, and they arrest you if you don't pay off the Ponzi scheme rate. So it's way worse.
Yes, of course. But this is what's so hard for people to grasp, because they still believe that the government is, though there's overwhelming evidence to the contrary, they always believe to some extent that the government is on their side, or at least that their intentions are good or something. And intentions are such a non sequitur that, like, the government's intention doesn't matter if the system doesn't matter. And we can from first principles figure out that taking other people's stuff will always lead to worse results than letting people do things by their own free will.
But before the recent years, I was convinced that the reason most of the people were legitimizing state intervention, even when it's obviously hurtful and not helpful, was because of state mythology indoctrination. Like you're taught in school about democracy and the will of the people, and before the government there was anarchy and everybody was dying. So there's a lot of that. But what I've seen in the recent years is that there is a lot of that, but there's also the even more primal problem of people really wanting a shortcut and people wanting power as a shortcut. So if you say you cannot solve this problem like this because it will not work, the counter argument is yes, but what do? You cannot do nothing. So you don't want to do the COVID lockdowns because it doesn't make sense. It hurt people. But then what you do to lasting? So there is this idea that inaction is terrible, and you need some. So every problem should have an easy fast solution, and usually this easy fast solution is power. So in this territory, power takes the shape of the modern nation states and politics and nation state politics. But it's even deeper than that. If there was not a nation state, maybe people would just default to some kind of theocracy or local warlord, but somebody that can take a shortcut, an easy way out of the problem, which is a general fundamental problem.
I wonder what the evolutionary origin of that will to succumb to a leader comes from. I guess it has had something to do with groups being able to survive wars and stuff by being yes men to this horrible leader. So while it may have been of detriment to the individual, it might have had some evolutionary group advantage. It's hard to tell, or maybe
like group cohesion and a hierarchy are very natural evolutionistic traits that help people, because you can work together, division of labor, and even hierarchy. So asymmetric division of labor, where there is somebody better at something, so you will just take orders because it just works better. Especially in emergency, like in war, you need the general to just give order and people just follow. So as a general trait, it works. But I think that what is basically moving it out of the evolutionary niche of efficiency is that we are using that for general public political opinions and not for action. So like theory over action. So if you imagine people in the 13th century, you are a farmer. You don't care for this king or that king. You try to defend your house. You try to defend your field. If the king is asking for too much money, you will ask to the next king or to the bishop or to the Templar Knights or to the merchant to negotiate with you a way to reduce your overall taxation. But you don't have a strong opinion on everything which is going on in the world. Mass polarization, mass communication made everybody feel entitled, but also in need of media as well, because everything I see on social media, I want to have a strong opinion about it, and I feel pleasure into exposing this opinion. The problem is that now there is this instinct that in order to be organized, you should always fall into a specific group and under specific hierarchy for efficiency, which does work in a small group in the battlefield or hunting a mammoth, but it doesn't work when you're trying to give your opinion of everything, which is way more complex and way less prone to be just put in two alternative boxes. So the politicization of everything, people that think that they have to choose a party among a couple of parties, basically, for everything. So there is left position, right position for everything, and you should just put yourself into one of the tribes, the mega tribes. So in a way, I think it's problem of scale. Tribalism is efficient at small scale, where you just blend in with your clan, but it's very inefficient at large scale when you try to recreate a tribe with everybody else on earth about any kind of topic and to fit everything in a couple of opposing visions.
Yeah. Speaking of those politics and how the rules change, I mean, we cling on to these different political parties, but I have the feeling, especially during the last stages of COVID, that the rules were changing all the time. And it becomes a part of the mechanism, of the virtue signaling mechanism, that you can, oh, I'm so good at following this new rule. I'm adapting fast to whatever my overlords tell me, and therefore I'm a good person. Do you think that, like, in this day and age, that the rules change more of, because in my opinion, like, what's even more important than sound rules is that the rules don't change. if the rules stay the same, we can always circumvent them, or we can always figure out ways to collaborate and form bonds between people, because we know what tomorrow will bring. The rules that don't change bring a level of certainty, which is a very, very valuable thing. I mean, certainty is in a way the most valuable thing. We all speculate about the future when we make, but in your opinion, do you think that politics have become more, ever changing and changing faster and faster as time goes by?
Yeah, it's a great point, and I think it's very, very true. You made the example of COVID. With COVID, everything was tribalistic since the beginning, but the distribution of topic kept changing. So, for example, at the beginning, one squad, one team was the conservative vibes, which was usually non-mainstream in the contrarian view, which in this age will be more right wing, while the left wing, so-called, which is more the mainstream political opinion, the current political correctness, at the beginning was considering racist everybody over concerned with the coronavirus, because if you are afraid of Chinese immigrants, you are racist. So there have been a phase in which like being scared of the coronavirus was something right wing and conspiracy theory and bad, and being not scared was something virtuous. Then it changed because of several reasons. But then being not concerned or being rational about trying to understand some risk management or any kind of analysis of the problem, which is what were not pure panic, was right-wing conspiracy. And the majority position was, this is the apocalypse. Everybody is dying forever. The lockdowns are unnecessary. Let's destroy humanity to cure the flu. But then you had the other way around, because now, for example, I remember when there was the COVID panic, more than now, everybody was dying of COVID. So you have like literally a kid run over by a truck in Italy. So they already tested the poor kid dying, and they ruled he had COVID, but he was completely asymptomatic. And it was counted as death for COVID. So the other party, which included me, were mocking this, like everybody's dying for COVID. Now, though, since there is skepticism about the COVID vaccine, which is pushed by the other side, so now everybody who is vaccinated, who is dying, is clearly dying from the vaccine, which basically the same kind of argument just reflected on the other side, which I find sometimes is equally fantastic, because when you have people clearly dying of something else, which is vaccinated, which is reasonable because most of the people are, so that your sample is completely biased, because there's no control samples. People took this experimental drug. So now everybody's dying for that. Or again, I remember in America, when Trump was identified as vaccine man, most of the Democrat Party people were actually fighting against the vaccine as something unsafe, dangerous, because it was a Trump vaccine. And then it became the OG vaccine, so it was fine. So you have this shift. And this shift is the real danger, I agree with you, because if there is, you can stop and analyze, you can form your opinion. If there is changing, then there is a leadership. So people cannot change idea so fast without delegating the opinion to some opinion cartel. So this is the same problem with pronouns and woke stuff like that, and politically correct. The problem is not that, as a principle, we should not use different pronouns for people, or we should not give people the names that they ask. The problem is that it's dangerous if something goes from normally accepted, socially accepted, to super offensive and criminal into the span of 2 months, and you have to run to keep yourself updated with the authority about what is offensive today. So there is a lot of misunderstanding about politically correctness. The point is not being offensive because it's fun. That's sometimes
that's a part of the point. Yes. Yeah.
But for satirical comedians, that being offensive is the point. But beyond that, the point is that it's not sustainable that what is offensive changes 1 month to the other because somebody in some jet set group said that, and now we have the virtue signaling is not changing the pronouns. The vector signaling is being up to date with the global mainstream intelligence so much that you can know that changing pronouns is necessary before everybody else, and you can shame everybody else first. So you can change this a lot. It's not about the code. It's about showing, it's again, global form of tribalism. It's showing off that you are delegating your judgment to the mainstream dominant group, and you support the current thing. And the current thing is very important because the current thing changed. And maybe it will be the current thing with, I can see pendulum effects in which the current thing would be the total opposite of the current thing today. And the point would be changing with it.
Yeah, I think we're with Hollywood, with Disney committing franchiside for both Star Wars and Marvel so badly the last couple of years, when there's a female version of every superhero and they don't have to do anything, they're just overpowered instantly. I mean, the backlash against that is becoming quite big, and they are losing a ton of money by this woke. So I think there is a backlash coming. And but as you said, I dread that also, because that will just lead to another thing being the offensive thing du jour. Like, maybe we'll go back to gay bashing or something.
Like, I was not there, but in the 70s, under McCarthyism, everything which is now mandatory was then forbidden. So everything that now is like, if you mention the strange sexual revolution theory, or no pro-US political theory, or anything actually which now compulsory the mainstream culture, you were completely ostracized on the other way. We may have swings of the pendulum back, and that will not be nice either, because probably in the context of the 70s, I would identify myself with a typical left-wing liberal of some sort, because it would be anti-war, anti-prohibition, and anti. So that the point is that we try to stay on concepts, while the real tribalism is not on concepts, is on teams. That team against this team.
Tribalism. It would be better if the pendulum was a metronome than a wrecking ball. Yeah.
Right. Well, in a way, probably the point is to fraction the solution is to fraction the wrecking ball. So if you have many small metronomes that are not enough, so even metronomes can destroy bridge if they are all in a resonance, right?
Yeah.
So
very good point. And the wrecking ball you can reduce the damage somewhat by putting Miley Cyrus on top of it.
It has a stop.
I was thinking of something else, like playing the devil's advocate here to get the discussion going. Because if there's one thing about the lockdowns and everything and the draconian policies that surprised me in a positive sense, was how quickly it disappeared. And I think there's a lot of horrid things. Like, people seem to have forgotten about the entire thing, and that's not good, because of course we should remember how bad it was and what they did to us as a species. Like, these elites just randomly doing all this bullshit against it. But you have to accept that like the exit from COVID went much more smoothly than any of us had expected, I think, because you had this last remnants of the lockdowns where rule change, everything different in every country, in every province even. I mean, I was working at the HR department of the offshore company at the moment, and just getting people through Germany, where they had different rules in different jurisdictions in Germany, in different provinces. It's completely mad. But it seemed like the world just snapped out of it. And I know, because I was traveling a lot during the time, and 1 month, everyone had a mask on in the airport, and the next month, no one had. And I think it was when flying back from Miami, when I went to the airport way too early, and no one had a mask on in Miami. Everyone had a mask on in Madrid. And it was pretty weird. And the next month, no one had it in Madrid either. So what do you think happened there? What's your like conclusion? Was it like the pressure became too much for the politicians? Because to me, that's optimism, that like, this peer pressure from the populations. And I think social media and video calls and, people just talking to one another, and because we are closer connected through social media, everyone on earth is, even politicians are closer connected to everyone else. So there is a tipping point. It's somewhat akin to when the Soviet Union fell. It also just disappeared overnight, sort of. It's a bit of an over-exaggeration, but you get what I mean. I think people can snap out of this mass psychosis formation thing as quickly as they, or even quicker than they fall into it when there's enough ridicule or enough like momentum for the other sane side.
So I don't have a fine, simple answer to that, because I think it's very layered. So the first layer is, of course, I'm also happy fundamentally that everybody's just forgetting people that were ready to spy in the house of their neighbor and I called the police on him. Now they're just shaking their hand with the neighbor, just everything is done. It was just a bad dream. So everybody just waking up from a bad dream of basically mass psychosis, which is probably one of the characteristics of some mass psychosis. I've read that something similar happened to stuff like in Salem witch trial, and where everybody was burning women everywhere. Well, then let's just stop it and people just forget it and forgive each other. And maybe even in Germany was similar after Nazism and stuff like that. So there is something which is good because it's also a testament to humanity's ability to overcome tragedies and to just go over stuff. On the other side, though, it's also part of what we were saying before. The point was not really being afraid of COVID. The point was being ready to be conditioned into some kind of fear and some kind of psychosis. So before it was fear of the racist people, against Chinese people, because of the virus, and was the fear of Trump pushing an unsafe vaccine. Then it becomes fear of COVID. These things that way for a while, but then like even this mass state was not like on and on, but it was on, off, on, off, on, off. And the real virtue signaling was not keeping the mask on. It was knowing when it's cool to have it on and when it's cool to have it off, following the current thing. So that's not as optimistic as, because, I mean, if the fear is that people will remain into COVID panic forever, that's great to see that that's not the case. But if the fear is that something deeper, which is just the current phenomenon, that's, I think that the easiness in which the contrarian order came in and was accepted, it's very like a theory concept, like the guy says, let's go there, let's change this, but really very fast, which is your previous point. So if it was one on and one off, end of the night, I would be optimistic. But this keeping changing, I think, is not very optimistic. What is good, though, is that I don't think the efficiency. So COVID overexpressed this mechanism so much that I think the efficiency of the mechanism is fading. So right now we were supposed to be all in panic for Putin invasion. Well, I'm against Russian invasion, as you are, and we discussed that, but I do not feel I didn't buy a Russian panic as I didn't buy COVID panic. And most people, maybe after COVID and after realizing the COVID policies were a joke, they maybe even have even stronger rejection of the pro-Ukraine agenda as consequence, even excessive maybe. So there is some kind of immunization. So the acceleration of this agenda thing is so much that I can feel some breakdown of the efficiency in the people. It's like they're not so ready to. It's diminishing, right?
Yeah, and that's a very positive thing in general. Like a skepticism towards whatever these institutions say. That's very, very sound. And so do you think, like, because the Bitcoiners were ahead of the curve a lot during COVID? I mean, I remember you and I were on a pod very early on and discussed these things before they were even like a topic for for normal people to discuss. And also Safety was very early in pointing out the absurdities of any policies, really. And so it felt like Bitcoiners were ahead of the curve. I mean, my personal journey, I was scared shitless in the beginning because of a bunch of personal reasons in the family that and I fell for those videos from China where people were dying on the streets. I mean, that was a very nice psyop. Congratulations, CCP media. I mean, and everyone fell for it, but it felt like Bitcoiners were sort of ahead of the curve in figuring out what was bullshit and what was not. So do you think in a similar event in the future, whatever it is, a computer virus, terrorist, some natural phenomenon to be scared of, or whatever they use for a villain the next time, do you think the Bitcoin community actually will have some influence on normies because they have learned that, like, I mean, there was this whole hashtag thank a maxi thing. I realize we're still a very, very small group, but over time, like as time goes by, people should learn that this group of people is usually ahead of the curve in everything. How big do you think our influence really is? Is it still extremely small, or are we gaining some ground here? Maybe not only Bitcoiners, but consensualists in general. What's your
for example, let's try to divide the consensualists and libertarians or whatever from Bitcoiners. There is a strong difference. I was a libertarian since a very long time, but I knew I was contrarian and a losing contrarian. So my personal beliefs and logical deduction were against the mainstream, which was going more and more state. So I was losing. My being contrarian was losing position. So I was skeptical about this and that, but I was always proven wrong in the like, at least in the popularity context sense of the right or wrong. What with Bitcoin, after a while you just wait for the cycle, you are a contrarian who's proven right every time, each time. So Bitcoin is going to die, Bitcoin is going down and then you're right. There will not be inflation because the central banks and everything are put up, and then there's inflation. And this shitcoin will be different. This time the shitcoin will change the part, and then shitcoin fails. So Bitcoiners, and in particular Bitcoin maxis, are right all the time. This gives you this gives you a certain degree of conviction, which is even more than consensualists that maybe know they are logically right, but they keep losing. Bitcoiners keep winning, which is a more powerful kind of contrarianism. So it creates a lot of strength, a lot of conviction, a lot of maybe some arrogance, and also some credibility. Because even the people that would despise me and Bitcoin, if they just try not to be forgetful, so if they manage to zoom out from our argument today into the last 5, 6, 7 years, I mean, if they take out what I've said in 2013, it's very difficult for them to depict me as less credible because I was right on many, many things. So these things is probably, this fact is not zero and it's compounding. Of course, there is a counter effect. There is like a compensating negative feedback, which is the more we grow, the more we attract people that will be by definition normies. When all the world is made of Bitcoiners, normies are Bitcoiners because Bitcoiners are normies. It's
not really though. Not really though.
It's not neutral. You can change something. But when everybody else realizes that you were right and joins, it's not that there are fundamental psychologies. It's just like yours. You were different. And the reason you were ahead of the curve was because you were different. These are the same. And they will be the same even after joining Bitcoin. The internet changed the world. Everybody joined the internet. But the internet culture is not really, it didn't permeate every single internet thinker out there. And actually, you can have internet users that we just, they will just glorify internet censorship while on the internet. So I would think that adoption is in trade-off with purity. So the more Bitcoin masses will grow by being right every time, the more there will be some purity lost in two senses. One is contamination from normies, and one is people parodying even our slogans. Like we can make a very good meme about something. It's still a meme. It may be effective and useful, but it's a meme. And we know it's a meme when we say that. And you will find somebody that exasperate and parody, and that's already phenomenal, which I think is net positive, but in the long run, it can become negative. For example, let's think about, I don't know, some memes like, you should not answer to Nigerian praises on email. That's a very good heuristic, and we can make a computer security slogan out of that. Don't answer to Nigerian praises. That's a good slogan. That works. It's a very good maximalist slogan. But then eventually, you will be in Nigeria. There will be somebody with noble origins trying to offer you technology, and you will use the slogan against him, and it will be finally non-effective. And in this case, you turned a reasonable meme, a meme that was conveying a simple message, into something actually wrong in particular cases.
I just got a picture in my head of Samson Mao and Philip Karageorgevich in linen costumes, linen suits, landing their private jet in Nigeria to promote Bitcoin. And there's an actual prince in Nigeria.
I sent you an email. I'm sorry. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, good point. The purity thing, though, I mean, the kernel of real Bitcoiners, and you can tell when there's it has some to do with proof of work and how long you've been in the space. But you can tell when a person comes onto the scene and it's just pure fire, like this guy we had on the show that premiered today, Angelo Summers. Excellent. He wrote a little book about Bitcoin, and he's a young guy, totally brilliant. Same with Luke Broyles we had on the other day. Also took Twitter by storm, and now he's everywhere. So, and you can tell. Yeah, Sailor. I know you have your differences with Sailor, but still, he turned out to be
my tweets. So
he liked your tweets. So you're friends now. But he very quickly proved to, follow the. And even a guy like Bukele, which I'm very conflicted about, to be honest, but he very quickly changed his COVID narrative just because of the Bitcoiners. In the beginning, they were very, very harsh on with the COVID measures, and then he noticed that, oh shit, the Bitcoin maxis are saying the opposite, and he just changed 180 there.
That's a very good point of something which is volatile. So, volatility has really pros and cons. Volatility is bad in general because you need stable rules. But when volatility goes in the right direction, you're happy. So when Bitcoin is volatile in this sense, you're happy. So Bukele changing his mind about coronavirus from one day to the other was unpredictable, which is not a good thing for regulations, but in a very good direction. So what we have to also probably is that the dream of every trader is to just have volatility one direction and manage third parties in the other one. So the problem with Bukele's decision is that I'm afraid that just as easily as he changed coronavirus into freedom, being very brave and very bold about that, he can change it back. And the problem that I would have with somebody like Sailor or Jack Dorsey, in the sense of very big visible guy joining Bitcoin, promoting Bitcoin, is that they can Bitcoin just as easily as they can push it down again when they change their mind, which is typically in the Elon Musk situation. Elon the Bitcoin pusher and Elon the Bitcoin dumper. So, what comes around quickly can come around quick. So,
but Bitcoin is it's such a good antidote to that kind of behavior, though, in the long run, because it will prove everyone wrong. Like when for instance, now Trudeau is bashing Pierre Poilievre for saying that Bitcoin is an edge against inflation. Look at this, it has dropped 80%. That statement is not going to age well. Like sooner or later, Trudeau is going to look like a big clown because Bitcoin doesn't care about these people or these statements at all. And that's so beautiful. You have this thing to anchor everything into now. Like, I just hope that people remember, because like, I think that's connected to all these shortened attention spans, that people don't remember what the politicians did during COVID. They just, oh, that never happened. We never burned any witches. We never forced our kids to wear masks and
Yeah, really, to quote Gigi, it's all a question about time, right? It's really all a question about time. And Bitcoin
and timing.
Time.
It's a good
and time. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Bitcoin
memory.
fixes timing. There's something there, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe on
But it's
Nostr.
true. It's true. It's what the deeper level of the discussion is really memory and memorisms. And Bitcoin is based on a metaphor, of course, but Bitcoin is actually stability over time.
Yeah.
And that's what changes.
Yeah. And you have an indisputable history book that is not, it's not written by the winners. Well, it's written by the winning miner, you could say, but still, it's written by what actually happened, what people actually agreed upon happened. So, and that's a first. And that, I mean, imagine when the time chain is 200 years old, and we have this thing to anchor everything to, and you can look it up. And of course, the further away you go from the actual chain, the less valid the proofs and the evidences become, because like you can say that this happened here, but you can't really say, you can't really own a JPEG. So maybe it didn't happen. But still, you have something to anchor things to, which we never had before in that sense. I mean,
it's true. So Bitcoin can stand a storm like a Fed, like ordinance and inscriptions. There is this storm arriving. Bitcoin just stay there, and you can use it for a while. Then the storm goes, and everybody forgets, and Bitcoin is still there.
Yeah.
Bitcoin is there. Bitcoin just remains and does its thing with one block each time used, and the same supply schedule. Sorry, Peter Todd, will remain the same forever, because we already have the t-shirts with the 21 million, so we cannot change all the merchandise.
No, exactly. I love it, by the way, when people point out that it's actually not everything divided by 21 million. It's more like 16.5 million. Yeah. Try to mean that.
There was a very funny thing. There was one guy writing on Twitter the actual correct mathematical formula for the supply schedule with the correct part of the approximation.
Yeah.
And there was another guy showing the tattoo of the incorrect.
Yeah.
It was like desperate.
Yeah. And that picture's been around the internet for quite some time now, and it's slightly wrong. Well, what parameter was off?
It's approximating the continuum. So like 21 million as a continuous asymptote, which is not the case, because you have the last halving, so there's a lot of approximation.
Yeah, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about Satoshi's equation. A very memed version of that, a picture of that, was wrong. I think it's the n equals 50 that should have been n equals 49 or something. That they missed some parameter in the equation. I don't remember.
The parameter was just approximation. The lack of visibility below the Satoshi changes the number, because the number is lower, because the last halving we just
So it's never 21.
The last one with cannot to zero.
Okay.
So it's not a continuous equation. So the number is wrong. Slightly wrong.
But I believe that there was something wrong with the memed version of the actual Satoshi equation, that someone got the equation wrong.
Wait. Even in the white paper, there were mistakes in Satoshi's calculation. Not about the supply, because the white paper is not discussing the supply. But for example, all the calculation about the probability of attack or probability of reorg were slightly wrong. So there was a South American mathematician that corrected all the calculation. But still good enough to be still right.
And of course, deliberate on Satoshi's behalf, because he was an Übermensch, right?
Exactly.
Infallible. Well, I know you need to go, Giacomo. This has been a fascinating discussion.
Really fun.
Yeah,
I could go on for hours, but I can't.
Yeah, and it's always good to catch up with you. And we'll see each other in Bergen, Norway soon, I believe.
Yeah. So the logistics of that is
tricky.
Become tricky, but I am in contact with Eric. I will do whatever I can for as long as I can.
Do you know that at Gardermoen Airport you can buy 50 grams of dried fish snacks for 59 Norwegian kroner?
Well, that changes everything. So
of course it does. Of course it is. And
I need to tell you how much 59 Norwegian kroner converts to in euros or sats. Yeah, it's not good.
Sats. Sats.
Yeah. What else? I had something on my tongue. We'll be forced to go to a rave, I'm afraid, where we have to listen to music that we might have to take a pill in order to enjoy.
It's a dirty job by somebody else.
Maybe we should lead some of the Bitcoiners up to the church that got burned down by the black metal musician instead.
Oh, yeah. I want to see that. I want to see that.
Okay, we're going.
What's he called? Greven or something, yeah.
Fantoft.
Oh, yeah. I was talking about the black metal guy.
Oh, yeah. Vargvikernes, yeah.
Yeah.
I named my dog after him.
Yeah. Remember not to take these stories too literally.
No.
That's my advice to black metal heads.
Yeah, there we go.
My culture in this field is all derived from this Italian, ironic N-word still. They make these ironic songs that
I love it. I love that song in particular, and they've got a few other good ones like something Hallelujah or whatever, like
Hallelujah.
Hallelujah. Yeah. Great one.
Yeah, which is full of also of Nordic mythology references and Hebrew mythology, Hebrew references, because it's a blend between Hallelujah and Balan.
Have you seen these, Knut? You have to watch.
Yeah. I saw the one, the
Norwegian reggaeton.
Norwegian reggaeton metal.
I will link you.
Yeah. I've seen it before because you've linked them before. I love them.
I keep feeling that. They're great. They're great.
Yeah. Luke, did you see the one I shared with a song called "Holding On to Black Metal"?
Yeah. That was a little different.
Yeah, that's a little different. It's a bunch of hippies from somewhere in South Carolina or something that are singing about their youth and how they still hangs on to his old black metal records. And it's a very soulful song. It doesn't sound like black metal at all, but it's a pretty good song.
Perfect. Well, hey, Giacomo, thanks a lot for coming on. This was a banger, absolutely. So, yeah.
Thank you, guys. Let's do it again soon.
Yeah. Let's make it a regular.
And we'll see you soon. So, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. See you soon, Giacomo.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. I guess this has been the Free and Footprint Show. Thanks for listening.
It has.
That's how we end it.
It has. See you next time. Arrivederci.
Moikka.